Review bombings work. Say it after me, gents. Review bombings work. In fact, I starting to think it's damn near the only thing that actually does work, because not only does it send a very clear message to the studio from us that we are not taking this shit and we are taking action against it, but even more importantly, it sends a clear message to the normies, the wider audience, the very people that Creative Assembly have been so desperately seeking and catering to for the last decade or so. The very This is the thing. If the studios wish so desperately to chase people who really don't have any actual connection to the franchise, let us use that as a weapon against them. You want the wider market? Well, we are going to poison the well to the point where the wider market won't have anything to do with you because all of your games are mostly negative or mixed at best. Unless, of course, you start providing an actual product again. It really isn't that difficult. We really aren't actually asking that much when it all comes down to it, and yet this is the position that we absolutely must assume if we are to ever get Creative Assembly to make good Total War games ever again. And it might sound harsh after all. They're apologizing now, right? They're very sorry. Here, dear Total War fans, I am Roger Collum, Vice President, Creative Assembly, and writing on behalf of our Total War leadership team. It has been a difficult few months, and we recognize that we have made mistakes when it comes to our relationship with you all. It's been a constant conversation internally and how we can get back to solid ground. What's clear is that it won't be easy and that it will take time and effort. We are sorry. Oh, well, it's all fine then. It's all forgiven. And no, I am not being an asshole here, not in the slightest, because this is the same goddamn song and dance for the umpteenth time. Releasing a broken product, aggressively assaulting the fans, going, hey, you're not allowed to discuss our video games in our forums. That's a privilege, not a right you gain merely by purchasing our titles, plebs. This is what they've done for years and years. They screw over the fans and then, oh no, we'll totally fix that. And yet here we are. Did they learn their lessons after Empire? No. Did they learn their lesson after Rome 2? No. Are they going to learn their lesson after this? No. Because this is not a lesson, this is a strategy. Okay. Let me take it down a little bit here. So, Total War Pharaoh. So, obviously, the Shadows of Change thing was the biggest single event here. It was very clearly not enough content for far too high a price, right? And they got chewed the shit out for it. That is when they responded that, okay, discussing this is actually a privilege, not a right, and you just gotta pay for it, because it costs what it costs, and we need to run a studio here. Then, of course, the Japanese came flying over, saw what else Creative Assembly was spending all of this mountain of money on, hyenas, and levied several threats against them, presumably. Several of which, assumingly, again, involved katanas and white kimonos. But Pharaoh, I think, is the biggest thing here, okay? So they are reducing the price of Pharaoh, and they are giving a partial refund back to the consumers. Good. This is what you should be doing at the very least. And they will be putting its price down to $40, 40 euros, and £30. But I want to point out, this was not Creative Assembly's intention. And intention is important here. What the studio actually wanted to do is what we should remember. We should not now go like, oh, they're lowering the price, fine. Now is at a decent price point. No. Creative Assembly fully and absolutely intended to sell you a game at full price that they knew was not a full Total War game. I wish to remind you, Pharaoh was not a Sagas title. Pharaoh was not DLC for Troy. It wasn't some standalone mini expansion or anything like that. It was supposed to be the next great historical Total War. This was meant as a mainline release. And it had next to nothing. And was being sold at full price. That is what Creative Assembly wanted. That wasn't a fluke, it wasn't an accident, it wasn't a miscommunication or any of this bullshit that they're now coming up with. And I know, I am being strident, but you have to be. After years and years of consistent abuse, at some point you've got to bite back, don't you? Creative Assembly intended to have you pay full price for a product they knew absolutely full well, with no doubt, no question whatsoever, was not actually a full product. It was merely yet another platform for countless pieces of DLC, until eventually you had paid 3 times over to get something that at least resembled a baseline Total War game. That is their intent, and that is what we should judge them for. And all of this rest of this waffle here, this is ass covering and practically nothing more. Now, there are some interesting mentions here as well. Let's see, was it at the end here? Our goal is to invest more in our player channels moving forward, introducing more voices from the studio who can speak to you directly about their work and how that relates to what you want from our titles, and most importantly, to keep listening to feedback. This will all be a work in progress, so bear with us, but this is our direction moving forward. So, this again is a line we have heard before. They're going to, oh, we're going to listen this time. Again, do not give them an inch until they actually start producing some results here. When we have a full-scale, good old-fashioned, complete Total War in our hands, then we can consider whether or not Creative Assembly has done a good job. Up until then, nothing has changed in my opinion. As for these new channels, okay, it's the thing. I've seen some people speculate that this was going to be like contact with influencers, for example. I don't believe that for a single solitary second. At the very least, not in any meaningful way. Creative Assembly only works with people they can control. They have demonstrated this again and again and again and again. Now, there are a couple of exceptions. If somebody is large enough to the point where the exposure is worth the potential risk of negative PR, then maybe. If you're talking to somebody really big. But other than that, we know for a fact, they've told us pretty much directly that if you don't toe the line, you are not going to be allowed to create content for Total War in an official capacity. Official, quote unquote. They use the access to their games as a way to force people into behaving, because they have conditioned people into thinking that the only reason why people come to them is for the early access stuff, and if they don't get it, they'll be outcompeted, etc. We've heard this stated repeatedly from several of the content creators themselves. I have my own story, of course, where many people don't know this, but Creative Assembly used to talk to me originally, back in the day, and this was long before I got political on any level whatsoever. What suddenly got them to stop talking to me, however, was when I was talking about things that they maybe could do better in their trailers, or things that I thought that they might be getting wrong, and I was proven absolutely categorically correct on 99% of it as well, and that was what caused them to stop talking to me. Creative Assembly only works with those they can control. Remember this. This is also why they're primarily going to do channels from their studio, where they mentioned here that they're going to be using, from the studio, who can speak to you directly about their work. So in essence, what's going to happen is you're going to get a Creative Assembly employee pretending to be an influencer, in essence. Not like officially, they're going to be like, hey, I work at Creative Assembly and I totally think that I have your best interest in mind. Don't mind the fact that I'm being paid by the people who have repeatedly exploited you. That's not relevant. I'm starting to get flashbacks to the whole the whole Disney affair, where you can't really trust the people who are being paid by the company to keep the company on a leash. Unsurprisingly, I know. If you are getting a direct benefit from the company, you probably should not be considered as an authority on whether or not what the company is doing is good or not. But oh well. Details, etc. So, they do also, of course, this thing. I am being quite aggressive towards CA here, because they've goddamn deserved it. But these are the correct moves to make. They will retroactively, not that one. They will retroactively add more content to Shadows of War. We'll listen to your feedback on Shadows of Change, and we know that it failed to meet your expectations on what a DLC should be. To address that, we are enhancing an offer for everyone who purchased Shadows of Change with more content and a commitment to ensuring that we better meet your expectations going forward. This is a good thing, and if they actually keep their end of the bargain, again, we can consider forgiving them. and changing the price on Total War in something more reasonable too is entirely what they should do. Now, I would argue that even $40 is a bit much for Pharaoh. I'd knock off another tenner, honestly, but it certainly is less of a scam than the previous, English is difficult today apparently, it is very late, in my defense, okay, than the previous price point. But again, if you have one singular takeaway from this entire video, it is that the only reason this is happening is because their feet were held to the fire, because we damaged their reputation with the mixed and mostly negative reviews. That's what's damaging them. That's what other people who know nothing about Creative Assembly, nothing about Total War, who simply hear about this game and like, wow, that looks really cool. I'm gonna click on it, it's giant battles, click, oof, mixed, I don't know about that, and then they're gonna move on. Those are the people who we are arguing about right now, because Creative Assembly always wanted the wider audience. Well, two can play that game. Two can play that game, most assuredly so. Review bombing is the reason why we are here, friends. Review bombings and review bombings alone. So good work and keep it up. Until next time, I've been Arch. Thank you very much for watching. I do hope to see you all again soon. Have a good day.